Well, hello, friends, again. Stephen on Sunday. Stephen Manning here from the Integrity Ireland Association. We're back with our weekly summation of events, both international and Irish related, and all in context of what I'm calling the original principle. And the symbolism for the original principle is that little icon there on the top right, guys, okay? And if you want to know more about this, please just explore. We are putting more and more information about it up online. My sincere belief is that the more people that understand this concept, this original principle, the sooner we'll be able to sort out most of the shocking problems that beset the world today. So without further ado, the title today, as you can see, friends, is Making an Ass of the Law. We'll be covering political pardons. This is the Joe Biden pardoning his son Hunter, what it really means, the chaos in Korea, declaring martial law, and general global socio-economic turmoil, the major stuff that's going on. We've just heard about the revolt in Syria and so on. But there are a few things that we need to stitch together to make sense of this, because as most of you would know, those of you that have followed me previously, I started off as, if you like, a pro-justice activist in the Irish pro-justice community, trying to do our best to curtail the unlawful, illegal and criminal machinations of the system there, and got appropriately punished, targeted and vilified for doing so. But this has morphed now into an understanding that it's not just, the problem is not just confined to Ireland, of course. And once you start to understand it, and it aligns again with this original principle, once you start to understand it, you'll see why now we do talk about global affairs in the same context. So, to start with, let's pull this one up for us, guys. Yeah, so just some of the issues we'll be covering today. The pardon, the Hunter Biden pardon by his dad, President Biden, after months of saying he wouldn't do it and using it as a hallmark of personal integrity and so on. The Assad regime falls. France's government has fallen. South Korean president gets impeached, or maybe in a second row he'll get impeached for declaring martial law and so on and so forth. Now, there are links between all these, and then there's Olaf Scholz, German government also collapsing. What is going on is the big question. Now, we'll start here with Hunter Biden. Now, I'm trying not to be sleazy just for the sake of it here, friends. This is just to remind us all, bottom right there, that's Congresswoman who held up these placards in the US Congress, challenging and questioning some of the crimes that Hunter Biden has committed. Far left, you can see him with a crack cocaine pipe in his mouth there. There's similar shots as the one in the middle there with prostitutes, and not just prostitutes, but in some cases, allegedly underage women, girls, of course. He's also been convicted of gun-related crimes, securing a gun while he was a crack cocaine addict, lying about it on the forms. There's tax evasion crimes he's been found guilty of as well. And on the top right there, you'll see, if I can bring this up a little bit larger, top right, Hunter Biden's laptop emails reveal another crime. Now, this is one he hasn't been prosecuted for. He did not file what's called a FARA application, which is a foreign agent declaration, right? Even though he was acting as a foreign agent, he was fulfilling all of the criteria of someone who is a foreign agent and has foreign interests, receiving, as we all know now, receiving tens of thousands of dollars monthly from Burisma, which is the one of the state-owned, Ukrainian state-owned energy companies. Okay, he had no qualifications to be on the board or anything, and it is widely, generally understood and believed that he was basically selling influence to his father. Now, on the top there, you see it says this story is unavailable. Just for interest's sake, that's what happened when I first of all I searched for some of these Hunter Biden related content, and that screenshot at the top came up about one of the more salacious stories about his shenanigans and what he's been doing. But it does, like I've said in previous videos, we've got to be asking what is the nature of a family who operates like this, and then after months and months of absolutely declaring that, oh no, he'll never, absolutely not, he'll never be pardoned, and then all of the the mainstream media that would have been pro-Democrats in particular, but the general mainstream media, the woke crowd and everything, pointing to the fact that Joe Biden had declared he would not be pardoning his son. They were pointing out how that displayed integrity and nobody's above the law and the rule of law is paramount and aren't we all good boys and girls, and whatever you do, don't ever possibly vote for anyone other than Joe Biden, this absolutely honest man whose word is his bond, and so forth. So the pardon, very interestingly, friends, and I just dwell a little bit on this, guys, because I think it's super important that we all understand what's going on here. First of all, when we talk about law is supposed to be a set of principles that help us govern social norms, and they're supposed to be principles based on ultimately on morality. That's simple. Now, I've been saying this for years. The law has been weaponized. It has devolved into a collection of makey-uppy rules and regulations that suit the elite, suits the people in power, especially if they control the governments, which even in our so-called modern democracies, the legislature, who are the people who make up laws, and the judiciary are supposed to be completely separate, but they're not. As a matter of fact, Ireland is the classic example. America is another one where judges are politically appointed. So who do you think they're going to favor when you have two competing people in a case before them, and one of them is from their own chosen political affiliation? It's human nature. It's not good human nature. It's fallen human nature, but that's what happens. So what Biden has done here, and arguably, I'll pop this up again for you guys, arguably what he's done is make sure he himself also, President Biden himself, is not likely to be retrospectively prosecuted for his involvement in this stuff. Now he's doing this. He's doing this pardon of his son. Now, don't forget, now his son was actually convicted by a jury of his peers, and would have been sentenced, arguably, possibly for, they say, decades in jail. Joe Biden Sr. Has come along, and he's backdated the pardon all the way back to January the 1st, 2014. Now, why would someone do that? Why is this important? Well, I'll tell you why it's important, my friends. A little picture down there below with Vladimir Zelensky, shaking hands with the big guy, all right? And of course, you have to ask the obvious question. Could there possibly be any connection not only between Biden's rabid support of Ukraine, sending billions upon billions of US taxpayer dollars to really what is ultimately a lost cause, and the fact that his own son was appointed to a state board and receiving thousands of dollars, plus the fact that Biden, now that he knows he's out of office, has just authorized Ukraine to use long-range US missiles, which is an extremely dangerous and extremely provocative act when you're dealing with someone like Vladimir Putin, okay, as we all should know by now. So those are the questions I want people to be asking themselves. And on top of it all, of course, is the hypocrisy and the corruption. And what does this mean about the rule of law. I mean, Biden himself kept saying, I had it written down here, in my administration, no one is above the law. Really, except for you, your son, and all of your lackeys and cronies that you're thinking about pardoning. So here's the next thing, the next slide here, where the who else could Biden pardon is the question. Biden announced he was pardoning his son Hunter, but who else? Well, in also lined up are Adam Schiff, Anthony Fauci, and Liz Cheney. Now, why would anybody be? Now, like I said, this is being discussed. It doesn't necessarily mean that Biden himself has said it's going to happen, but it does suggest that it's on the cards, it's on the agenda. And the reason, first of all, we'll forget Fauci for a minute, that demonic, I don't know what to call him, creature. The highest paid civil servant in the world, one of the most adept and capable liars of all time, has profited in the millions from the horrors he has visited on the global population with his lies about the pandemic and so on. But anyway, let's go back to this here for a moment. So why would Adam Schiff and Liz Cheney be in line for getting a pardon? Well, the simple answer to that is because they were on the, what do they call it, the Oversight Committee or something, looking into the January 6 riots in America. This is where it was alleged that Trump basically instigated a riot that constituted an attempt to take down the democratically elected government and all that sort of stuff. Anybody who is watching the news, and I don't mean the mainstream news guys, because they don't talk about this stuff. You must do private research. You must start looking at trusted social media sources. I would argue, I'm a very small player in this field, in the sense that approximately once a week I will give a talk like this, and I'll bring a certain a novel perspective based on the original principle. But there are some big names out there that are worth looking, that are independent, that don't have to kowtow to the establishment, that aren't being sponsored by the likes of Pfizer or big tech, and can afford to tell you the truth. So you discover then that there were a number, I don't have the exact number, but Congress is looking into this at the moment, and you see them grilling people. The amount of times the Republicans in particular are grilling these democratically nominated or elected senior civil servants, judges, attorney generals, all this sort of stuff. And they've learned the script off by heart now. I'm not prepared to go into that. That's not my area of expertise. I delegated those decisions to another person, and you should put those questions to him, etc. Gaslighting, obfuscating, red herring, if you can say that. But these two, Schiff and Liz Cheney, were on this committee, and they were basically using a lot of unlawful tactics to engineer an outcome that would be detrimental to Trump. And it constitutes crimes against the American law. Okay, so here we have now discussions afoot in the Democrat Party and the higher echelons about pardoning these people and retrospectively pardoning them as well, which frankly is, again, this doesn't even make sense. You pardon someone after they get tried and convicted of a crime, if you're going to pardon them. The pardon comes after a trial and conviction, not before, formal charges, at the very least, have been levied against you. They're just making an absolute mockery of the concept of law. And if they can do it in America, even though they've been doing it in Ireland for decades, but if they can do it on America, but Ireland escapes a bit because we haven't had the spotlight of the world on us in the same way the American presidency does. But if they're doing it in America, guys, you can be sure that this is a harbinger of bad things to come globally for so-called democratic governments. Like some wit said once, maybe we should try it sometime. So and just a reminder, guys, that this was a slide I used previously. about Biden sending nukes, and there he is cozying up to Zelensky again, This is such a stupid, irrational, provocative move that I am left dumbfounded and speechless at how in American politics, you can have a new president voted in, Donald Trump, okay? Now, we know he's not supposed to take office till mid-January, all right? But there's a transition period. Why don't they have some block on a disgruntled and arguably semi-demented outgoing president from doing things that are going to scupper the chances of the new incumbent coming in, or the new president coming in, to be able to manage world affairs? That's if we get to mid-January and Trump's a formal inauguration, because the signs so far are good. Now, they won't be perfect because he's still working within this diabolical system that we'll look at in a moment. But as I said in a previous video, maybe what we need is a hybrid creature, a hybrid person, someone like Donald Trump, who has his feet sort of thing in both camps, in the sense that he understands how the system works and he can navigate it, but he isn't essentially a product of that system, meaning essentially the political system where everyone does as they're told and they get rewarded for their abject deference and loyalty, okay, which is the main reason they hate him, because he's a threat. So now, right, so who else is he going to pardon? May I make a respectful, tongue-in-cheek suggestion that Karine Jean-Pierre, Biden's press secretary, also known as Medusa by some witty commentator. Medusa was the mythical female creature with snakes all coming out of her head, the multiple-headed snake creature, right? Yeah, insulting or not, I think it's probably quite appropriate, because the amount of lies this woman has told, standing up, in there. And if you're interested, go and look, guys. Go and look at the recent, she gets questioned by the press saying, well, look, hold on a minute. You're the one who said absolutely Hunter Biden would never get pardoned. And you emphasized this. It was said, someone said, one of the reporters said hundreds of times, not just dozens of times, hundreds of times. So is she also going to get pardoned for persistently lying to the American people? Somehow you'd rather think that no action will be taken, will it? But these people, you see, what's, again, another point we'll be making in this talk today, is that a lot of these people in senior positions of power and authority, or in the system, have gotten there precisely because they are capable liars and deceivers. That's why they're there. All right. Don't be misled by the pretty looks, the nice teeth, the smart suits and ties, or whatever it's going to be. Most of these people, you start off on that premise, and then you look for the rare exception where that may not be true. So a reminder too, a previous video, friends, and just pop this up quickly. That was in 2020. For some reason, there was over 20 million extra votes when Biden got elected. That sort of came out of nowhere, and the question still hasn't been answered. How could this possibly have happened? And it rather reinforces the allegations at the time of massive electoral fraud. I'm not the person to go into this in great detail now, but there is so much askew with the American political system now that one has to assume that we're nearing the end of a cycle, global political cycle. And I think that's evidenced in all the things that are going on around us. Now, this slide I'll pull up in a second, my friends. Very simply, it's personality traits and occupations, comparing empaths versus sociopaths. Very simply, empaths are people who care about people, other people, and sociopaths only care about themselves, and they will abuse and manipulate other people in order to get what they want. Now, this is a study of, I'll take myself out of this so you can see it properly, my friends. This is a study, and as always, if you want to freeze this and come back to it and have a good look at it. These are some of the occupations where most empaths, and it's sort of percentages, so you get the highest percentage of empaths tend to be care workers, nurses, therapists, craftsperson, beauticians, etc., charity workers. All right, that's the highest percentage. So now over on the right-hand side, the highest percentage of sociopaths and psychopaths tend to be found, as the studies have shown, the CEOs of international corporations, lawyers and judges, of course, lawyers and judges, solicitors and all that, in the media, right, TV and radio personalities, salespersons, and so on and so forth, down there, police, right. I'm not going into a big description on this, and civil servant and politicians down there at the bottom. It attracts these sort of people. Well, what are their characteristics? Well, very simply, on the left, we have the empaths are kind and caring, self-sacrificing, honest and truthful, cooperative, repentant, thoughtful, compassionate, dependable, engaged, sympathetic, facilitative, generous, empathetic, considerate, and trustworthy. Of course, not all the time, not 100% of the time. As some people will have stronger traits than others, but this is a generalization. Over on the right, sociopaths and psychopaths tend to be ruthless and amoral, deceptive, charismatic, manipulative, predatory, avaricious, remorseless, exploitative, ambitious, self-serving, egocentric, pitiless and callous, unforgiving, unscrupulous, and unsympathetic. Not the nicest people to be babysitting your kids or to be going on a holiday with. I'm trying to make this point, guys, because we're going to look at a few individuals here today and ask ourselves, why are we allowing people with these personality and character traits into positions of high power and authority in the global institutions? One argument, of course, is, well, we didn't know about this before, which is, of course, is a valid excuse, but that's partly why I'm doing these things. We're trying to spread the word, get people to understand this. The more people that understand this, the sooner we're going to start coming up with solutions that either block, prevent, or hamper sociopaths and psychopaths from getting into positions where they can do even more damage, because they do not care about people. Whatever they tell you, remember, they're charismatic liars. So whatever they tell you cannot be trusted. All right. I don't know what's coming next. Here we go. So to emphasize this point, this is one of the slides that I put up quite a lot, my friends. This again explains, this is what I call the diabolical structure, the pyramid. All right. I call it diabolical because the original model, the original principle over on the right, comprises spirit, mind, body, divine, feminine, masculine, concept, plan, and action in those orders, right? And it's quite a complex thing to explain. Those of you that are following me will have heard me talk about this before. But what I want you to look at here is an understanding that nearly all of the large systems in the world, governments, bureaucracies, corporations, institutions, organizations, right? Even the so-called benign ones like churches and charities, believe it or not, guys, if they're a certain size, they have to adopt this model to function within the current global system, which is comprised of all of these pyramids, some larger, some smaller, but in essence, the whole of the world is one massive diabolical pyramid where there are bosses or autocratic tyrants like Assad, or presidents or heads of big corporations like Klaus Schwab and all the rest of it, big tech, multi-billionaires, who basically, if you want to benefit from their largesse, if you want to be in their organization, if you want to work in their government, you've got to surrender your conscience. It's almost a prerequisite. Now, of course, there's rare exceptions to this rule, but I'd like you to look at that, guys. So you have the government or the boss at the top, supported by bureaucrats and administrators who are all getting rewarded according to their ambition, greed, and service to the system, all right, by being promoted and given higher wages and stuff. And down at the bottom, you have the employees, the consumers, customers, and the public, who tend to be obedient lackeys, sycophants, and servile employees trapped in fear, ignorance, and or convenience, and or with misplaced loyalties. I'll vote for this political party or that political party because my dad did and my grandfather did. Misplaced loyalties, guys, you're not thinking it through, and you're surrendering your God-given conscience-based choice in return for a feeling of being, right, we're all cozy in the collective, you know. And I'm talking now to people who support political parties without really examining who it is that they're voting for. Now, this too, guys, on the same theme, and if you bear with me, guys, because this is an important theme, this now is a model which I use to explain what I call the sociopathic empathetic scale. All right. Now, please understand, my friends, this is a model. Okay. I'm just using it for descriptive and explanatory purposes to start. But this is also one that you should probably freeze afterwards, have a look at it, blow it up, freeze, put it on your computer. The only thing I ask is if you forward this on to other people and they ask questions, please quote that I'm the author of it, so that if people are in any way confused, they're not getting incorrect explanations about it. But very simply, on the left-hand side, we have, again, the empaths represented by the blue, you know, the feminine concept, the maternal construct. Actively good people at the top. These are well-educated and well-informed people who are actively doing good, all right? As you descend down the empathetic scale on the left, and you get people who are less educated or less well-informed, they tend to be more and more passive, less active, and thereby more easily influenced, okay? Over on the right-hand side, sociopaths and psychopaths, as I've explained before, these are people who, generally speaking, do not care about other people. The most actively evil ones tend to be sociopaths. Now, sociopaths you can be trained to be a sociopath, by the way, in your career or in your upbringing or anything, if you're continuously subjected to inhumane principles or behavior or abuse, for example, especially in the workforce and things like that, you can actually become a sociopath. Psychopaths, on the other hand, tend to be born that way or as a consequence of a brain injury or something like that. But sociopaths will use the psychopaths because they tend to be a little bit more obvious and more easy to get caught. They'll use them to do the dirty work, okay? So here we have, so you have empaths on the one side, sociopaths on the other. At the top, the highly educated sociopaths are actively evil people, okay? And then in the middle, you have the bulk of humanity, actually, guys. It's a very high percentage, believe it or not. It's around 95% of the population of the world are what would be described in general as apaths, apathetic people. The followers, right? The passengers, the obedience, you know, people who don't want to know or don't really care, or they are unaware, ignorant, apathetic, and unconcerned, all right? These two are the cannon fodder. They are easy prey for clever sociopaths and psychopaths who would seek to control and control you and have you do their bidding, okay? Now, the next slide I'm going to show you guys, this was the model, all right? This is the model explaining the difference, the basic difference between the three groupings of people. And you can ask yourself, where am I on this model? Well, at any given moment in any day, for example, if someone has just cut me off in traffic, I might lose my cool and, you know, stick the finger out the window. I don't do things like that normally, but let's say I did. In that moment, of course, I'm not being very empathetic, am I? I'm not being very kind, all right? So in that moment, I'd be drifting over here towards the right-hand side, being aggressive and abusive, you know, there at the bottom right-hand side, you know, being a bully or whatever, right? But over the course of a lifetime, it doesn't matter where you start on this scale, obviously uneducated and uninformed, you start at the bottom somewhere. But the idea, of course, is that we should be progressing upwards and drifting up towards the top left if you actively are seeking to be a good person. Sadly, unfortunately, a lot of people actively pursue careers up to the top right because they see financial reward in it, power, prestige, and possessions, and so on and so forth, all right? But this wouldn't be so bad a model if that's actually how the world is, but it isn't. This is just the model. How the world actually is today is this. Now, as you can see, we've left in the middle the apaths, the block of apaths are still there. Most of the commentary there is exactly the same as the first model, except you can see now the actively evil people have now taken control of global institutions, capitalism, communism, banks, nation states, the media, education, health, justice and law, energy, food, science, and the so-called professions, which are only professions if they maintain ethical and technical standards, which we've seen them drop abysmally in return for the 30 pieces of silver that the big pharma companies or big tech or corrupt governments are willing to pay them. Yeah. Professions are the profession of prostitution. That was really the only one that fits some of these, so-called trusted professions who all sold their souls. But as you can see, guys, what I'm really trying to make very clear is that the uneducated, even good people, right, if they're uneducated and uninformed, or even only somewhat educated and uninformed, the chances are they have been tricked and deceived and captured by the sociopaths and the psychopaths, the actively evil people who basically control the world agenda, the global agenda. So hopefully you and I, those of you who aspire to better things, are in that top left grouping where at the very least, we're questioning and we're questioners and truth seekers, and we're supportive and proactive in seeing what actively good people are doing, and we're trying to aspire to that. Now, I don't want to make predictions here yet, but I see the beginning of the end of this model, in as much as people are starting to wake up, and as we aspire to the original principle, as I keep talking about, which is about concept, mind, and body centered on the spirit of God, of goodness, of the Almighty, Allah, whatever you want to call it, it, they, them, or whatever. It's understanding the combined feminine and masculine properties at their very best, where the masculine supports the feminine, doesn't dominate it, and the feminine deploys the maternal and nurturing instincts to ensure that the connection with the divine is maintained. It's relatively simple, but it takes a while to explain it because we're already blocked by the cognitive dissonance that goes along with living in this corrupted, fallen world. But the changes are about to come. So again, guys, I'll just blow it up for a second. If you want to freeze it, stop the thing here now, freeze it, copy it, or come back to it, and we'll move on now to the next slide. Yes, so this is, again, a diagram, and it takes me sometimes weeks to develop these diagrams. But on the left, you see the original principle in linear form: concept, plan, and action, or deity or source, feminine or wisdom, and action, the masculine, the power, the energy, the construction, completion, all that sort of stuff. Over on the right, in the center at the right, you see the atomic structure. That's proton on neutron surrounded by an electron, which interestingly at the bottom right matches the idea of the bottom right matches the idea of an atomic family, so to speak, which again is constructed of the love, which corresponds to the divine. That's like the electron binding the proton and the neutron together, which is represented in the masculine and the feminine respectively. Okay, and I'll just read the text at the bottom for those. And there in the middle of the model, the idea is that all of these enlightened individuals, you see every single one of them, the red ones are the men, the blue ones are the women, but each of them in their own right has a concept, plan, and action, a spirit, mind, and body, contains the deity and the feminine, masculine properties, but in their respective feminine and masculine forms. Okay, and if they're in these collaborative unions in communities where everybody understands this notion of concept, plan, and action, origin, feminine and masculine, to say concept, yeah, that's right. Or if you like, God, even Adam, but it's in that order. That's what has to be understood. Human history, his story, has been a corrupted reversal of that order. The spirit of God is largely missing, replaced by the black of darkness, if you like, and the feminine has been utterly dominated by the masculine, which is also a reversal that started with the Cain and Abel story. And as a consequence, we've had a male-dominated history of violence, oppression, greed, anger, wars, blah, 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 blah. Okay, it all makes sense. We've got to start reversing that. I think the process has begun. I just need more and more people to understand this, so that it doesn't take as long as it's taken us to get into this state of affairs with so much turmoil in the world. Enlightened, empowered, sovereign individuals who are connected to Source, or God, do not need to be controlled, directed, bullied, ordered about, or otherwise subjected to authority, especially when that secondary I'm sorry, I can't even read my own writing here, guys. That's yeah. It's. I'm sorry to say it's too weak for me to read. That second authority is comprised of autocratic systems that are being directed and governed by sociopaths and psychopaths. These are the pyramids. Oh, human, of course, says human. Sorry, that secondary human authority, as opposed to divine authority, is comprised of autocratic systems that are being directed and governed by sociopaths and psychopaths. Those are the dark black pyramids I was talking about there, guys, okay? A natural collaborative atomic model of society, governed as it is by the true concept, the golden rule, requires only that all partners respect their own consciences, continuously inform the same, and truly live for the sake of others. Lovely stuff there, a bit kumbaya-ish, but absolutely crucial to understanding what we need to do to bring society back to the original model of the Garden of Eden, so to speak, okay? Now, cognitive dissonance, again, just pull this up and the whole, let's just read out the text, all right? Because some people are still a bit confused. You see, if you live in a world where everything that you've known since you were a child, sorry, guys. That was my son, Danny, just there in the background for a minute. Hi, Danny. He just waved. All right, thanks, Danny. Yeah, thanks, Danny. I'll just keep going here. If all you've known is this world, and suddenly, like me, someone like me comes along and says, "Oh no, it's all about this original principle thing, and we've got to start understanding it," the first thing that's going to happen is a little bit of bewilderment, a bit of confusion, a bit of shock, denial. I say, well, that can't be so because I know what I've lived, my lived experience. All right, we're going to come to this in a moment and the importance of lived experience versus beliefs and versus this original model of perfection. But this cognitive dissonance is the reaction of people to information that they can't fit into their worldview, even if that information is absolutely true. And this is what tends to happen. Cognitive dissonance is the mental conflict that occurs when beliefs or assumptions are contradicted by new information. The unease or tension that the conflict arouses in people is relieved by one of several defensive maneuvers. They reject, explain away, or avoid the new information. They persuade themselves that no conflict really exists, no conflict of information, yeah? Or they reconcile the differences or resort to any other defensive means of preserving stability or order in their conceptions of the world and themselves. Now, this also goes for the political world, guys, okay? And you've seen it happen all around us at the moment. Everybody is imagining, oh, there's chaos in Syria or Korea or whatever. Quick, let's revert back to the relative stability that we had before. What I'm saying is we need to understand if that relative stability does not align with the original principle, we may be making a huge mistake, okay? So the same in our personal lives, and it's the same on the global stage. We need to understand what the original model of perfection was. And this is what this slide is about, which I'm going to have to fly through because as always, I'm running tight on time. This slide I usually explain in 4 separate parts, and I do it slowly and very methodically, and it can take half an hour to explain it all. We're going to do it in about 3 minutes. On the right is Galileo. I just want you to understand something. The world believed that the earth was flat. And this was the teaching of the Catholic Church, which was the predominant authority in the Western world, at the time, okay, 15th, 16th centuries. Okay, Galileo and Copernicus, these two stargazers, scientists, discovered that the world was round and that the sun and all that were not going around us, we were going around the sun. And they tried to explain this. And what they were really doing, if you look over on the left here, they were trying to posit a reality that challenged existing beliefs. Okay? They tried to posit a reality that challenged existing beliefs. It was 360 years before the Catholic Church would admit that they were right. And of course, they faced excommunication and being burnt at the stake if they didn't shut up about their inventions at the time. All right? So the main point I'm trying to make here, my friends, and don't jump ahead too far. You'll be looking up the scale there and saying, oh, what's this? Symbolism, perfection. Okay. So our lived reality cannot be denied because we can see it, taste, touch, feel, and all the rest of it, okay? So the simple argument is, if you believe something, and me or somebody else comes along and proves that it's not true, naturally you have to surrender that belief and accept the reality. If you're a sane, rational human being, common sense, right? Okay. But then there's the problem, as you read. If you freeze the slide when I make it big again, guys, freeze it and read through it. The reality that we've lived, as I've just explained, is a false reality. It's not the original model of perfection that aligns with this original principle on the right, top right. It's a false reality that contains all sorts of chaos because of the fact that the masculine has been dominating the feminine for all of recorded human history, his story, all right? And that's when we come to symbolism. And what I'm saying to people is that hardly anybody has understood how important symbolism is. The reason symbolism is so important is because it is the universe's way, if you like. You can apply this to God if you wish. I'm not, I always try and stay on the right side of facts and realities so that, there's fewer and fewer arguments. But somehow and for some reason, the universe has been instructing us through symbolism, archetypal wisdom symbolism, okay? Look up these words, guards, archetypes, wisdom symbolism, how to return to perfection. And believe it or not, this is evidenced in literally the properties of light itself. It's a speciality I've been involved in now for about 25 years. I wrote a book called The Color of Truth about this. It's in the properties of light. It's reflected in the numbers and the periods of history that keep repeating themselves in mythology, scripture, and human history. It's reflected in the colors of the flags we choose for our nations, and so on and so forth. And it's a subliminal indicator which it's not being controlled by man, okay? It's not being consciously controlled by man. But for some reason, it's right there in history. And I've a series of presentations, and I've written a couple of books about this now. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that the symbolism, if you understand it, is hugely important because it is pointing to the original state of perfection that we can only guess about in the Garden of Eden. But we're starting to piece it together, guys, and then compare it to the existence that we all live now in the world today, and you realize, oh my God, this is the direction we have to start moving in. So over to Syria now, very quickly, just a few comments because the news is going to be alive with this, guys. 50 years of authoritarian rule in Syria is over. Bashar al-Assad, this was yesterday. It said he's presumed to have left the country. I was going to say, my guess is he's gone to Russia. Found out today that's exactly what he's done. But please keep your eyes on this, guys. There's more than meets the eye going on here. Syria, as you can see, its position there is in the center of the Middle East. It's huge, in a hugely influential position. With Assad gone now, there'll be competing Muslim influences, for example, the Shias and the Sunnis, the Iranian influence versus the Saudi Arabian influence. You've got Russian bases on the, in various places in Syria. They've got, I think they've got naval bases as well as military bases. Israel apparently has already gone in and annexed some buffer zone between the two of them, and so on and so forth. I mean, this is possibly a hugely unsettling thing. And I want you to look at the Syrian flag there, okay? As you can see, bottom right, because this is, again, remember I was just mentioning symbolism, all right? Remember I noticed the top right, you've got the original principle comprised of the white, the red, and the blue, okay? And the symbolism, all right, here we go to the next slide. Here we go, my friends. Now, I'm just putting this out there. I'm not making a definitive statement. I'm saying to you, look at all of these pan-Arab colored flags, all right? And it's a slide that I thankfully lifted off the internet. Thank you to the person who had those up there, all right? HTS at the bottom there is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. These are the lead, the foreguard, if you like, of the rebel forces that have just taken Syria. But their flag is the one over there on the right-hand side with the green band at the top. The Syrian flag is the one on the left, right, on the left with the red band on the top. None of these flags have blue in them. I want you to notice that. It's the feminine principle. This is very, very interesting. Neither do the four horses of the apocalypse contain any blue, the feminine blue, the empathetic, nurturing aspect, okay? But what you do have is the four horses of the apocalypse. Look it up, guys. There's plenty of material online about this. This is from the book of Revelation in the Bible. The four horses of the apocalypse are red, white, black, and green. I don't believe it is pure coincidence in these very disturbing, arguably end times, that these are the colors of the majority of the Arab nations. I've done another video, if you go looking for it, guys, about Cain and Abel and this historic dispute between the Arabs and the Jews, why the Jews, for example, have a blue and white flag, and the Israelis, versus this. It's all very, very interesting. Even if all I do today is twig your interest and get you thinking, oh my God, he's absolutely right. Why don't they have any blue in their flags? Why are all these masculine dominated flags, with the reds and the blacks and everything and so on and so forth? So reading for it goes all the way back to Cain and Abel, at least theoretically, and certainly as far back as Abraham and his sons Ishmael and Isaac. Okay, the leaders of the Arabs and the Jews. All right. Here now, we'll fly through the last few, guys, down to the last few minutes. I just want you to remember earlier we talked about the occupations of sociopaths and psychopaths, right? And CEOs of international corporations was one of the top ones. Lawyers was the next one, civil servants and so on and so forth. Well, look at this. How interesting. So Macron's government is falling, right, or has fallen. Who is Emmanuel Macron? Well, he's an ex-senior civil servant and a Rothschild banker, all right? Well qualified to be up there at the top of one of these diabolical pyramids. Below him, the Korean president, Yoon Suk-yeol, yeah? Who is he? He's an ex-lawyer. He was a prosecutor in the Korean government and a politician, eminently qualified, Who is Olaf Scholz, the German government collapsing at the moment as well? Who and what is he? He too was previously a lawyer, all right? They're all eminently qualified in the psychological department, when I say eminently qualified, to be at the head of these diabolical constructs, okay? And linking them all, as you can see, if you put two and two together here, guys, they are all proteges of the World Economic Forum, the 666s of Klaus Schwab, which I've talked about on several occasions. Back to the authoritarian systems. This is again in support of the previous slide, my friends, where you see the pyramids all there. I'm saying to people, we're in this global network of diabolical constructs. There it is in upside down form. You see the top right, the original principle in its original form. Here's the perverted form with the black and the red dominating the blue, or with the complete absence of the blue, which we see in many cultures that do not recognize the feminine. And the opposite side, the democracies, and I'm not saying they're perfect by a long shot, but at a certain time in history, most notably around the Second World War, all of the democracies recognize the feminine element and the right for the collective. And as a consequence, interestingly, they all seem to choose red, white, and blue flags. Again, I do a lot of different work on this, guys. Feel free to freeze that. Let's just pop it up for you. Feel free to freeze that and read what it says as we move on to the next slide. There again, just a quick one comparing the two systems. Again, please feel free to freeze the slides, examine them. You start getting I do this in diagram form because it is one of the easier ways I find to convey somewhat complex ideas. But the difference between a top-down pyramid where a boss or an authoritarian individual, an autocratic individual, is telling you what you can and cannot do, versus collaborative associations where everybody respects every other person's unique connection with the divine and their right to have an opinion based on their conscience. And if we all did that, guys, and we all learned from each other, there would be a natural sort of osmosis, and we'd all ascend to increasingly higher levels of awareness of what are the most effective, efficient, and fruitful ways of doing things, rather than just the most profitable. Okay, so I hope that now is it's big enough for you all to see, guys. Oh, and one comment I want to make here, guys, too. We talk about our democratic governments without fully understanding that all of the departments inside these so-called democratic governments, all of these government entities and institutions, they're all autocratic. They're run by a senior minister or a senior civil servant or a government, a president, or whatever it is, and they make, like your man out in Korea just made this autocratic declaration and nearly threw the whole of the Korean Peninsula into absolute crisis. This is what they do. That's their mindset. They're just showing it to us on a plate so that there can be no doubt that even as I explain these things to people, you can see it in the evidence all around us. Yes, now into Ireland. Hypocrisy, the practice of claiming to have higher standards or more noble beliefs than is the case. All I'm saying about this, guys, is that I'm shocked and massively disappointed that the Irish electorate, if we believe the outcome of the elections, because we've uncovered previous massive election fraud here when voting on European amendments, constitutional amendments, and the right, we find out that it's possible, highly possible, and likely that the yes votes from a second vote were added to the yes votes from the first vote to carry them over the line. I personally ran for the elections on a couple of occasions. On both occasions, had a big chunk of my few votes disappeared by miserable, mealy-mouthed election officials who wanted to make an example of someone like me who was calling the establishment to account. Sadly, and again, just a little play here, there's your, frankly, what would be the right word? I don't want to say stupid Paddy because I'm a Paddy myself, and we took us long enough to get past those negative constructs, but certainly blissfully unaware Paddy jumping up and down in delight that his particular political party has been returned to power to visit more grief on the Irish population. And there's our friend Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum. He's the only one applauding this, him and his cronies and lackeys on the world stage. Coming near to the end now, guys, this is the Burke family. I want to give them a shout out, guys, because I think these people are an example to us all. I think they are an incredibly, inspiring, just an example to us all of what integrity means and what following your conscience, your God-given conscience means as the system comes down on them. Amy there, she's a solicitor, top right. She's a solicitor. She got booted out of the biggest law firm in Ireland, Arthur Cox. Why? Well, basically, in a word, without going into unnecessary details, because she's trying to follow her conscience and they're following the diabolical model. The two can't cooperate. So they're powerful. They're more powerful than she is. She's out. She has a brother who's a barrister. He can't find a firm where he can, somewhat ironically, devil, Deviling, isn't it interesting? Deviling is the name given to the trainee period for barristers, lawyers. Interesting how it all comes together, isn't it? But she's facing jumped up charges because allegedly she put her hand on a guard for 2 or 3 seconds. It's there in the middle. Amy's now being charged with obstructing a guard in the course of his duty by allegedly placing her hand on his arm. Hey, listen, priests do that when they give you a blessing, don't they? Place their hand on your head. For assault, father, you're guilty of assault, while he was detaining her brother, Simeon, Enoch, her other brother, in jail now. I'm not sure how long now, 500 plus days. You know, I'm wondering, is it going to go to 666 days? You know, and this on the same occasion that Amy's been alleged that she, she assaulted a guard, she had been thrown to the ground herself. You know, where's the balance in the law here? Like I said, they're making an ass of the law, not the Burkes by any shot, but the administrators, the judges, the guards, the politicos, the system, the civil servants. They are, and as I said in the post, they are utterly ridiculous and utterly typical. The system closing ranks and cooking up false allegations to silence those who expose the system's criminal machinations. Birmingham J, this is the president of the Court of Appeal, a politically appointed toady of Fine Gael, another political party, now has a track record of similar unlawful interventions. For example, the last time I was in front of him was on a video link a few months ago, guys, on an appeal. And he literally, when I asked him a couple of direct questions, my appeal, right? Imagine if I was standing in the court, he couldn't have done this. When I stood in the court a couple of years back, a few years ago, his response to me challenging the lies and mendacities in the system was to get up and walk out. As I called after him, what's the matter with you? Is that all you got? Walking out on us? This time I was on a video link, and he did the same here with Amy Burke and that. This has nothing to do with gender ideology, and he got up and walked out, apparently, when she was trying to do an appeal. With me, he instructed the court service to cut the video link, and they admitted in an email. It's just ridiculous, guys. It's a farce. They're disgraceful toadies and lackeys of the system. They're getting rewarded for being liars. Support the Burkes in any way you can, please, my friends. This is a brief showcase of my own book, Criminality in the Irish Courts and the Absence of the Rule of Law. Again, freeze it. Feel free to freeze it and read it, guys. If you want to know how bad the so-called justice system in Ireland is, please read this book. It names 100 personalities in it, 40 plus judges, including the most senior judges in the country, about 55 or so, 50 odd politicians, senior civil servants, and a few assorted nefarious individuals who, because they're connected to the state, the system, have been getting away, in some cases, literally, with murder. Another little comment here, guys. I just want you to note, we're into the last couple of minutes now, what links all of these people. Again, Justin Trudeau there, top right with Starmer. England and Canada have now both voted in assisted dying, which is euthanasia by any other words. There's Trudeau with Rishi Sunak and Klaus Schwab. Rishi Sunak, the previous Prime Minister of of England, who made a fortune out of his investment in Moderna, and so on and so forth. All utterly unscrupulous individuals that do not deserve our time and respect, let alone our vote. I keep telling people to watch out for this guy, Justin Trudeau. It's an interesting one. Freeze it, guys. Talk about all of the symbolism lining up and waving a huge red flag saying, watch out for this guy. Watch out for him, guys. The amount of 666s associated with his name is astonishing. Finally, as I come to a close, that's where you can find more information about us, my friends. I thank everybody for your time and attention. I absolutely intend to get on time for Sunday next week. I keep doing Stephen on Sunday. On Mondays, the nature of looking after a wonderful special needs boy on my own and trying bit by bit to change the world. All right. Thank you, and God bless to everyone. Please keep up the support. Help each other, and be wary of the so-called authorities. God bless.